Yasasoli. This is a story that I wrote called The Debt. The man sat in his comfortable chair and read the screen in front of him. After 2 decades, they had finally met their goal. There was no money owed to the foreigners. At long last, he thought, I can go out, stretch my legs, and enjoy the rest of my life. He turned off the computer and opened the door. Silence greeted him. He walked down the long and empty corridor. No one worked here anymore but him. He had long ago stopped feeling the guilt of the empty cubicles, had stopped feeling the stares of the people as he walked past. In fact, he hardly saw them anymore. All he knew was that it was a cool and beautiful day. He exited the building and stepped out into the afternoon air. A car passed, and he stopped to wonder at it. He hadn't seen one in over 10 years. The streets were all empty now, empty and somehow full, and as the realization that his life's work was now complete finally hit him, he took off his blinders and looked around. He was walking on dust, the dust of the bones of those who had gone before him. That woman who worked in the drive-thru, the one he had yelled at for being slow. This was her 3rd job, and she was lucky to get 4 hours to herself each day to sleep. The woman with the whining baby in the restaurant. He had made her leave, so she never got the free 2-day-old food that the owner had set aside for her. She lived in fear of him, and she and her baby had died on the street. The old man who had begged him for money because he was powerful. He had thrown him a few coins. The man threw them back in disgust. All of these were now dust, and the ones who were now living were but walking skeletons. They didn't notice him, and he tried not to notice them as he passed. Suddenly, he was hit with an unreasonable fear, shame, and guilt all combined. It wrapped itself around him like the bandages on an ancient mummy, and he stood silent and frozen with it. Deep inside, he had the feeling that this was not something new, but something old and monstrous. 1,000 voices seemed to echo in his mind until they filled the air. Young, old, weak, strong, high and low. "You owe us! You owe us!" they said. "No," he cried out. "You don't understand. We paid off the debt. We're free." "You owe us," the voices cried a final time. Then the man's heart began to race, and he was short of breath. "What is happening?" he panted, the sweat now pouring down his body. "Pay the debt," the voices said. "Please, give me one more chance." His knees began to buckle and his body to shake. At last he fell flat on the concrete. He noticed then that same car. It was coming back. "Help!" he managed to say between gasps. "Please!" The car stopped and a man got out. He merely looked on as the first man breathed his last. "Thank you," said the man, "for paying your debt." He snapped his fingers then and smiled. The man sat in his comfortable chair and read the screen in front of him. After 2 decades, they had finally met their goal. The end.